Hi everyone, Magnus here, this time with a 2-hour lesson with one of my subscribers, Valentin, as well as introducing this feature that he created called Puzzlik. If you're interested about it, I'm about to show you guys some more as the video begins. I do have a discount code that you'll be able to find in the description. But without any more, let's move straight into the lesson. I'm here today with a subscriber of mine, Valentin, and he's looking to get to around 2000 ELO on chess.com. Currently, he's around 1900, so this is sort of like the final push. He's also the founder of Puzzlik, which is a really cool puzzles website, which basically it takes all these positions from your games and turns them into puzzles. So they're a lot more personalized. They're not just like these robotic chess.com puzzles that you get so often, which often at the lower levels, they're kind of just really basic, like back ranks all the time. And as you get to higher levels, they can get a little bit obscure, and they're not really, you can often feel like they're not really directed towards you. So we're going to start off doing some puzzles from this Puzzlik tool. Valentin will be, this will be from his account, so these will be nicely directed towards him. I don't know if you'd like to introduce yourself, Valentin, just say hi.
Yeah, hello YouTube. Magnus is gonna help me with achieving my goal of reaching 2000 ELO on chess.com. He said that I'm around 1900, which is almost true. I'm like an 1800 rapid and 1500 blitz, but we are going to focus on rapid game.
Yeah, I mean rapid is a much better. I find for improvement right away anyway. Like blitz, you don't really have time to calculate. So okay, we're going to start off with a fresh puzzle here. This will be from one of his games that he's played in the past, and we're going to try and have a look at what he's missed. I'm going to, as you can see here, it'll explain the move that he did play in the game, which in this instance is rook to f5. Makes some sense, it goes after this pawn here. But I'm going to give him a little bit of time to try and come up with something, see what moves and ideas we can have.
Yeah, so here I think that we have to leverage the pin on the h pawn and use essentially attack the weak pawn on g2 with both of the rooks. So I think the move here is rook e to g4.
Yeah, so that's a very good.
Just attacking the pawn.
That's a good start, but the question is, let's say, how do we continue after this move here? Just simply defending. You always want to try and
queen takes on f2 maybe.
Yeah.
And then pawn. Okay, but then queen back
and queen back. That's very nice. So yeah, exactly. That's the solution, and you want to try and be doing these to the very end every time, so that you don't want to be in a situation where you've played rook g4, and after the rook moves, you take on f2. They take your rook, and you didn't realize they could take your rook, right? You don't want to be in that situation. You want to be in a situation where you've seen that you can go back the whole way.
Yeah, I usually just see the first move and play it.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we want to try and avoid in the future. Because yeah, if you miss a resource, well, one, if you miss a resource in an actual game, then that will often just be the end. But also just in like training your visualization in general, it's really helpful to try and see things through. So okay, I think we can comfortably play this. I don't see any other defense other than here. There's no checks, as you can see. Our king is very nice and safe.
Well, actually interesting what's gonna happen after g3, like pawn g.
Oh right. Well,
the pawn is like weak. Just take, right?
Yeah.
Take, and then mate into.
Exactly. Sorry, yeah, I should have covered that as well. But yeah, rook g4, and these kind of moves it'll be giving this because this is the top engine move. But that does just lose the pawn at the very least, and then also another pawn then 2 pawns is enough to win anyway. The important thing when you're calculating is to do the critical lines when you've already got, I think I'm stealing a term from someone called Nixans, and he calls it the minimal program, which I really like. And the idea is that if you see something where you're winning a pawn or 2 pawns in everything that's a non-critical variation, then it's normally good enough and you can go for it. So we can just play this. Now, there might also be some funny business. This move probably wins. But
after pawn takes?
Yeah, after pawn takes, it's queen takes.
Yeah. It could work, but the queen takes maybe.
Exactly, and the question is, are you happy going for this endgame? It's a clear win, because you have 4 pawns, you have 5 pawns, and a queen.
Practically, I would win this, but in the puzzle, I think it's not the solution. But it's hard to say. I think just taking the pawn should be fine.
Taking the pawn should be good as well.
Yeah.
Something like here, then you're getting in as well.
Actually, just go back, because now after f3, the pawn on h file losing its support from the queen, so we can just go back and try to attack the pawn.
Yeah, you can do that as well. I think both these two moves should win.
There's millions of wins.
Yeah, everything should win. Oops, I think I've highlighted too many things.
No, I think it's not the move. Yeah, it's not the move.
Huh? Oh, it's not.
Maybe just take on the f file, on the f2 with the rook.
Oh, with the rook, maybe.
Yeah. Takes, and it's unstoppable. Yeah, it's unstoppable, mate.
Yeah, I mean it should be a win. I'm also looking at something a bit crazy, but
I think taking the pawn, because after takes, let's say rook. No, it won't.
No, apparently not. Have we looked at this one?
Yeah, I think we did, and it wasn't there.
I mean, both of these two should win.
Yeah, maybe there's like shorter way. Maybe just queen. Oh, maybe queen f4. F4.
Oh, queen f4. Yeah. Queen f4 will be the most accurate, because then they have to block with the queen. That's true. That's a good point.
Okay. Wrong rook. I think wrong.
Okay, fine. Okay, do you want to move on to the next puzzle then?
Yeah, let's. I think this one is clear. I mean, there were a lot of winning moves, so it was just hard to find the first one.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's more important that you see the move of the rook g4. that was what was essential there. Okay, so this one I actually quite like, because it's about converting an advantage, and I often find that that's what people struggle with the most, rather than these like 1-2 tactics. So that's something that I do really like. So we're gonna take a look, see how best you can transform this.
Yeah, I already see that we kind of can take on b7. The problem is that after that, rook b8, we can take the knight, but they can take our bishop at the end. And of course we stole one pawn, and then we are going to win another one on b file, on d4. But is it like really that winning? Because they will have like 4 pawns, and we will have only 2.
Well,
rooks. But one more piece. Okay, we are up a piece.
Yes. So always material count at the moment. They have currently got 4 pawns for your bishop. So after this, we restore material equality. The move you suggested, rook to b8, queen takes. They can't take the bishop just yet.
But after queen.
So after queen, exchange. Yeah. So we're talking about this position. The d pawn will drop, and I think this can be clearly evaluated as a win for white. mostly because of this f7 pawn here, which you can easily start to apply pressure with your bishop, which will be on d5, and you can get your other rook to d7, and you can just overwhelm the black f7 pawn. And these two pawns with an extra bishop will be a win after the a7 pawn drops off. However, there are some other moves to look at. You always have to be careful that you don't get tunnel vision on just this move. There's also this move, knight e5, which actually is not that good because you have got rook d4. So probably queen b7 is simple. You played bishop takes c6 in the game, which should probably be a win, because something like c5, your bishop attacks all the pawns on the dark squares. But yes, queen takes b7 should be a lot simpler. You just have to avoid seeing any ghosts with these knight moves or the rook move, and that should be good. Oh.
Yeah, but taking the knight is also...
Well, taking the knight's what you played in the game.
Oh. Yeah, taking the knight I don't like because it's like you just have to move the queen back somewhere, and it just gives the black time to like regroup. So here maybe straight away somehow pile up on the f pawn, but I also see the skewer with the black bishop.
Yes.
And the rook on the same diagonal, but I don't see exactly how I can like use this.
Yeah, this is a good observation, but we don't really have. Oh wait, no, we do. It's defended.
Oh,
that's bad.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
So
bishop there.
Yeah, just bishop a3 then. And luckily this is also defended by the queen, so everything's just about holding together.
Oh my god, I didn't see. I thought that knight can block, but knight, I mean, we controlled the b4 2 times as well.
Yeah, exactly. Then probably simplest. Yeah, just keep it simple.
I was thinking taking the pawn on b7 again.
We have to be very careful. We have to be very careful.
Yeah, of course. I would have blundered here.
Now it's just
we have to stay on the same diagonal. So
exactly. But what's the best way to make it?
I think queen a6.
Queen a6. Going for this pin here.
We are fine with exchanging, right?
Yeah.
Or no?
That's true. I mean, my instinct says queen c4 because it goes after this pawn. The queen's more in the center, and it's immediately pressuring the d4 pawn as well. But queen a6 also.
I'm the most scared about the a pawn. That's why I want to block it. Like blockade and attack, because it's outside passer and I don't want to like deal with it. On the other hand, those are connected passers, so it's like,
There's actually
maybe your move is right.
There's actually something very interesting to look at after queen a6, which is after c5. You say trade queens should be an easy win, but I'm not sure it's so simple. After the rook goes here, you're threatening c4. If you bring your rook and they bring their rook, the pawn is on c5, and they are bringing their king up to d6. I'm sure it is a win, but these two pawns can get very dangerous, and both of your rooks are being overworked in fully in defending them.
Yeah, agree.
So I think
c4.
I think c4
is the move. I think as well. You convinced me.
It's just following the principle of trying to keep the queen in the center. So I think we can probably do one or two more.
Let's do one more just to keep it as 3.
One more,
yeah.
Sounds good. So we are on, so we're on this one. You played pawn d4 takes on c3. But you did have an easier way. There's quite a few things to look at here.
Initially I was looking at bishop takes bishop takes knight, and then pawn to d3, and the pawn can be like really annoying for white. But then what if you just go pawn to d3 immediately, and the knight apparently is trapped? So
yes,
that's the. I mean, it's hard to see for some reason that knight is trapped. Like
it is
because it's not very common.
Yeah, it's very rare that the knight has absolutely no squares, but like strangely everything is actually taken away, and then the c pawn's actually doing a great job guarding d4 as well. So that is a nice spot as well. There's other tempting options like knight e3. Because if you see the rook doesn't have many squares to go, and if it goes there, then there's a fork. And on rook f2, it looks like you might have something, but the rook kind of just shields itself on a really weird spot. So you'd be pretty best off just repeating moves from there. So yes, d3.
It might be actually interesting positional move. Essentially, just saying that okay, we go there with the knight e3 in order to dislocate the white's rook. So, and after it goes to like g2, what exactly is doing?
The rook is on a weird spot.
But obviously, material being the knight is much better because
yes. So we do have a free knight
for a pawn. Oh, they cannot even take because they need to take with the knight. Yeah, or they at least need to block the bishop. Yeah, this is a strong move actually.
So I think there is one move that seems the clearest in terms of making progress here.
Queen b6 I'm looking at, queen b6, because knight d6 is not even a scary threat. You can just take with the either knight or bishop on f8 on f8 still there. So I feel like just queen b6. I mean, it's not even a threat, but
queen b6 is valid, I think, because it also stops this bishop from developing. The move that I was initially looking at is queen d3, just to keep it simple, because after queen d3 and this exchange, say the knight moves, you can just like keep playing simple chess with castles, and let's say they exchange and then take the pawn. There's actually a really common motif here, which is that after this check, white's completely paralyzed.
Actually, for another two moves, I think. I mean, they are paralyzed, but king goes to f2, and then rook just drops back to the first rank, and exchange. And I have the second rook. We currently have two pieces for a rook, which is a winning material advantage either way. I mean, there's all. Oh wait, no, I was going to say this is an interesting move. I was looking at this one. It doesn't work.
So the only reason
I agree with your move that it's fine, but you see, after we won the knight, actually there should be at least three moves that are winning, at least three, I think. Like just simple queen d7 should be just fine as well, or maybe there as well. Yeah.
The reason, I've come to like this one because of the pin. The only reason I'm hesitant towards queen b6 is because of a general principle that you don't want to, you want to have your queen centralized when it can't be kicked away. And when our queen's in the middle of the board, it can access many, many more things.
Yeah.
And I think that queen d5 is even better than exchanging off because of their moves, that they can be quite annoying. And there's also the benefit, it has an immediate threat of bishop d3. So I think we can probably safely go for this.
Oh, knight can go to d2 then, and defend the queen. Oh, the queen is already defended, by the way. So, but yeah, I think bishop d3 right now should be fine.
Bishop d3. It'll move the knight.
Takes. Long castle.
Yeah, well,
Maybe.
This is another useful point. We don't necessarily have to trade the queens, because let's say bishop d3, the knight moves. Is it really a threat for them to take this queen? Like, let's say you just castle.
Long castle and replace it by rook, yeah.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, like, of course, it's nice to have a rook on the open file, which is d file, but I don't really see any infiltration point for the rook. Essentially, d2 is very well protected, and d1 is like, what exactly is my rook gonna be doing that there? Like, of course, we can paralyze white for like a couple of more moves, but it's essentially they will go b3 and bishop b2 and exchange rooks, and that's it. On the other hand, any exchange is actually good for me.
Yes.
So,
because I think you're onto something when you're saying that white wants to try and make progress, right? But the issue is anything white does immediately destabilizes something else and gives us more targets. So let's say you were just to castle and put the ball back in black's court. What is black actually meant to? No, not black. Sorry. What's white actually meant to do? Like,
yeah, they want to win the pawn somehow. So maybe something like g4 and knight g3.
Wait, you're saying
g4 with the pawn? No, g4.
G4.
Yeah. But then knight there. Ah, okay. So knight there is with the tempo. Yeah. It's hard to play for white here.
Exactly. That's sort of what I'm saying, is that every pawn move they make that they want to try and liberate their pieces is a big concession. It weakens a lot of squares. So I think you can play simple. You can go for the exchanges if you want. I think there's a good few ways you could play this one.
How scared should I be for after long castle? Knight g5 maybe, like just attacking the pawn, the weak pawn. On the other hand, I can just no, I cannot push actually. Yeah,
Well,
I mean exchange is after the exchange, of course.
Yeah. As in, but they take with the king here though.
Yeah, king takes.
Okay, well, in that position, you have a winning move, I think. Pretty much, yeah, it's winning on the spot. So if you can try and find that one.
So after the knight g5, right?
Yeah.
Knight g5 and queen exchange. Interesting. I don't see, like, both knights are very restricted.
It's all about this pawn.
This pawn is like very weak. It's protected only by bishop. I don't see what it can do. It cannot move. Yeah, I'm not sure I see it.
Okay, that's fine. I mean, the move that I think wins is
long castle, just
rook d1. Yeah.
Or
yeah, because we have long castle exactly at the start.
well, yeah, long castle actually loses a pawn on f7.
Yes,
So,
but we're not bothered about them taking this pawn because we're attacking the rook instantly. So sorry. there might have been a bit unclear. The position I'm talking about is long castles. The knight goes to g5. The queens are exchanged, and the rook goes to d1. And the point is that this bishop has nowhere to move. And if they exchange, then we make a queen. And if their king goes back to f2, we can always just play f. Actually, I was going to say.
At that point, bishop can move because it's still protected by the other rook. So the bishop can move, but not to a lot of places. Like essentially, it can give itself for the knight on e3, because the rooks are protected, and even if I'll take a rook on a1, the e file is not the e1 is not protected, so I cannot push the pawn. So, but
yeah, this is true.
It's winning, but it's not like so easy to finish white off here.
Yeah.
Yet. But I agree. Castle is fine. Long castle is winning.
Yeah, the thing is, I don't actually think there is a winning move on the spot. Yeah. And it might even be something that after the knight comes out, maybe you're even just playing rook d7 and guarding the pawn. Like, when you have the material advantage of the two pieces for the rook, and this being such a nice pawn that's defended, I don't think we have to be winning on the spot. So that's another good thing. A lot of the time you can get sort of like dragged down, trying to be like, okay, I've got my material advantage, I have to find a win right now. But that can often be a bit of a mistake. You just want to make improving moves, move by move. When you're up material, you don't have to have an instant winning plan, you know?
Yeah.
You can just make gradual improvements. Let's say you maybe even bring the king back after the knight goes here. You can take things really slowly, because white, like we discussed, white doesn't really have any way to move forward without drastically weakening their position and allowing our knights to jump in. So I think that probably makes a lot of sense. Okay, so now we're going to move on to some games. This is like this is still kind of a bit of a warm up, and the question that I want to put to you is, in this game, you moved one of these two pawns to make room for your king, and this is just sort of a principle that I want to try and get across to you, which is, which pawn should you be moving to make luft for your king? And luft being like breathing space where your king can run to, so there's no back rank.
You just highlighted 2 pawns, but my intuition tells me to move the f pawn, and the reason.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, you can move that one as well. So yeah, you can move all 3.
I feel like the f pawn is more logical, especially because the game heading to the end game, and I want the passage for my king to go to the center the fastest way, and at the same time I want to have a left. So I would probably play like f3. Doesn't matter what I played during the game. Maybe I wasn't thinking. So
yeah.
But I feel like f3 feels like a good move. But if you want to discuss the difference between g and h3, then I think I should play h3.
I don't know. You can pick between any of them.
Yeah, I would play f3. I think, just to make a luft and have a way for my king to join the center of the board.
Okay. I will explain the problem that I have with f3, which is that after you play something like, okay, they played h6, but if you play f3 and the rook comes in, okay, now the rook is attacking this pawn here. I guess you're going to play this, and then move your king up. Now, this is a valid way to play, I think, in this specific position. But conceptually, f3 can be very dangerous, because if they were to, say, get 2 rooks stacked on the second rank, the king is extremely vulnerable to these attacks. But yeah, I think f3 is actually should be a fine move in this specific position. when you can combine it with this rook going here and your king coming up. But yeah, if we were picking, the main point that I was trying to get across is why g3, which is what was played in the game, is not a great move. And I think you can probably explain it yourself.
I already know, because the black has the white squared bishop, so obviously I want to have a loft that's opposite color of the opponent's bishop. So in this case, I want the black square for the loft, because otherwise I can end up in a situation that loft is made, but it doesn't do anything because the opponent put the bishop there on the long diagonal. So
exactly. Yeah. I just thought it was quite interesting because the position is so symmetrical with the same pawns either side. Literally the only difference is that these two pawns have been pushed, and because of that, black has got a comfortable advantage. It's like minus 0.8, minus 1. So just for the reason that the king is forever weak with these light squares. So yeah, anyway, I think you probably understand that. But now we're going to be talking
during the game. I think I was preparing f4 or something like that, but I don't know what was my plan.
Yeah.
Or h4. I have no idea.
Yes. Okay. I mean, this structure is generally very good. This like f2, g3, h4 structure, just not with the bishop this time.
Yeah. Unrelated question, by the way. I often confuse, like, where do I want to put my pawns when the opponent has like white squared bishop? Do I want them on the dark squares, and why? Or on the light squares? Like, logically, I think it should be white squares so that they restrict the opponent's bishop. But sometimes I hear the advice to like put them on the dark squares so that they cannot attack it.
I do think I have a fairly straightforward answer to this one, which is when there are rooks and a bishop on the board, rooks and bishops on the board, you want to basically, it doesn't really matter which color your pawns are on. You want to avoid them being fixed on the light squares. So the idea is that if you would say put this pawn on c4, that would be a really bad move, not just because it blocks the bishop, but because this pawn is now forever on a light square. But if you were to say play g4 or f3, let's go with f3 because that was the move that you liked, and I think it's a good move too. The reason why this isn't a bad move is because this pawn can go to f4, which means that if everything does get exchanged, it's possible for you to put your pawns on the dark squares so that when it's bishop versus bishop, because when it's bishop versus bishop, you don't want your pawns on the light squares. When rooks are on the board, it's okay to, in fact, it's even good to have your pawns on the light squares to restrict the bishop, because you can fight with the rooks and the bishop, and if you can block their bishop out of the game with your pawns on light squares, then you're basically up a bishop. But once the rooks come off, even if you can try and block the bishop out of the game, so let's say all these pawns were to go here, and black would have a structure with this f6. Now this would be very bad for black if the rooks were on, but if the rooks are all gone, then this would be good for black because white can't get to these dark squared pawns, but black can always make threats and try and come around the back and attack white's light squared pawns.
Okay.
So yeah, I guess to summarize what I'm saying.
Depends on the rooks, essentially.
Exactly.
If there are rooks, then it doesn't really matter as long as they are not blocked. But if there are no rooks, then it's better to have them on opposite colors so that they cannot be attacked.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly it. Okay, so now we are onto a position. This is in the French defense, in the line where you exchange this knight on f6, and they've been taking with the queen. You've had a good few games that have gone into this position, and every time your opponent has actually made a losing mistake. So we're first going to look at this one where they go knight to c6, and the question is why is this such a bad move? You actually found the first move in the game, and it's quite a natural move. Do you think you'd be able to suggest it?
It's either bishop b5 or d5, but I don't really see how it's winning.
So you're suggesting,
or maybe, yeah, I am suggesting this as well. I mean, I'm also looking at the queen, but I don't see how it can be trapped. So let's say bishop g5, queen g6. Does it trap the queen? No, it doesn't. So bishop d3, queen h5. No, I don't see it.
the thing is, you're calculating this line, right? And you've gotten up to bishop g5, queen g6, bishop d3, queen h5, and I don't think you've not rejected this, right? But you're saying this doesn't trap the queen, and you're sounding like not happy about that. But the thing is, you've just developed two pieces, and they've moved their queen twice. So
I mean, that's a benefit, of course. In my eyes, it's not a win. It's not a winning advantage. I mean, of course, I'm better in that resulting position, but it's hard to say that I'm winning. That's why I was like, I was looking for something else. But when you're saying that there's a winning moves or winning continuation, I'm usually looking at either winning significant amount of material, maybe winning the knight, or like something like that. Because a couple of time pieces on my level, they are not usually deciding the game.
There is a knockout move on the final position with queen h5. But the point that I'm trying to get across is that it doesn't matter whether or not you see that knockout move in this position. What matters is that you're playing the developing moves that you know are good, and you're making lots of progress, kicking their queen around and getting all your pieces developed, right? Mm-hmm. So you can try and find the knockout move if you want. But I can also just put some of the moves on the board, because in a real game, you don't have to be calculating everything from the start. You know bishop g5 is a good move, and you know bishop d3 is a good move, because you're getting progress on the queen, and you're getting closer to castling. At the very least, you can castle and be a lot better.
So sometimes I'm just reluctant to play bishops like this that just attack the queen, because in other positions, there is like knight on g8, and I'm usually like, okay, I will attack the queen, it will free up the space or the square for where the knight wants to go. But in this specific position, of course, it's good because knight has already gone from there. So,
yeah.
Well,
it's also
move? Like, okay. Yeah, what's the move? The final blow, let's say.
Well, I'm going to put it on the board.
I mean, tempting to play d5, but I don't know what it does.
Yeah, d5 would just open up their bishop.
Yeah. I don't know, maybe h3.
Yeah, h3, it's very subtle. The queen's trapped. They can't stop it. They have to... Sorry.
Yeah, did they have to play like something like f6 maybe? To free up the space and attack the bishop so it moves with tempo?
Yeah. But now, okay, I wasn't entirely on. The queen isn't fully trapped. It's not like we were winning the queen by force, but they have made huge concessions.
Yeah.
With the structure of their position. We don't even have to play g4. You can just drop back, castle. Black is significantly worse by you just regrouping your pieces and playing normal chess. Now, what actually happened in the game, and the reason why I was talking about a queen trap, is because the queen went to f5. Okay? Mm-hmm. And after the bishop comes out to d3, they played queen to g4. Now, in this instance...
H3?
Huh?
And they didn't play h3?
You did not play h3.
Ugh.
Possibly because you were concerned about queen takes on g2?
Yeah, very likely.
But what's the move that you would play after h3 and queen takes g2?
Well,
Sorry, what do you say?
not sure yet. I mean, rook g3 logical, but doesn't really do much, and queen just takes on h3.
Mm.
What else? Maybe rook h2.
Rook h2, yes. Where does the queen go after rook h2?
Yeah, oh my god, I didn't see this.
Yeah, it's a funny one. There's something very similar. There was a game that Magnus played. It was like it was a rapid game or something, and exactly the same pattern happened against a strong grandmaster. And of course, the point is as well that after this move, there's no time for the f6 like we had previously, and g4 will trap the queen. And just to show everyone who's watching, queen takes g2. Yeah, rook h2 is very nice, and it's rare as well because normally you're putting your rook to the G or B file to try and trap that way.
I guess that's why I rejected this initially, because I saw that h2 is defended first of all.
Exactly.
The second of all, that traps the queen.
Yeah.
Well, I saw that it's after g1, like rook g1. My rook is not really doing anything apart from the attacking the queen, and the g7 is protected. So
yeah, it's a really tough one to spot, to be honest. But like this is the kind of move where once you see it one time, you're always going to have that in like the memory store, and you'll know it for the future, right?
Yeah, definitely. Especially like because despite the king being so weak, there are no checks. Like the g1 is protected by the knight, and h1 is still protected by the rook.
Exactly. As well. It'd be easier to reject this because it's hard to remember like the knight is defending g1 as well. So the knight's doing such a good job here. It's guarding just everything, and it's protecting the bishop. Like this knight is orchestrating everything, and the queen's just holding on. So that's definitely
the whole
definitely
operation cool. Was orchestrated by the
yeah, exactly. So now this is another line in the French defense. You played a good move here, which is castles. And the point is that after they take, you instantly won back your pawn, and you actually played a really good game this one. You cleanly converted, and I think just checkmated them in the middle of the board. But what I wanted to make you aware of was another approach that you can take, and often should take, to this French defense when you're exchanging, right? So in this Tarrasch, oftentimes you end up trading both these pawns. And this might look quite counterintuitive to take the pawn on c5, because you're literally helping black to develop their bishop, right?
Yeah.
But it's not quite so clear that the bishop is actually on a good square here. Often the bishop should be on e7 and then come around to f6. And when it's on this diagonal, it's not really doing a whole lot in the French. As well as the fact that black wants to fianchetto their light squared bishop, because they're never really going to get e5. So when black's looking to fianchetto their light squared bishop, that decreases the mobility of their dark squared bishop, which then means that it can be a target in the future for you. So basically what I'm suggesting to you here is that this move of taking on c5 and helping their bishop come out is actually a very nice way that you can play, with the idea being that you're fighting against this light squared bishop's ability to develop into the game. So let's say you castle and they bring out their knight. The other really, really important concept in the Tarrasch is that this knight on f6 is extremely important to the black position. If black doesn't have this knight, and you can exchange this knight on d2 for this knight on f6, often white is not considerably better, but white has just got like a really annoying and nagging pressure. So can you try and find a way to trade off this knight as quick as you can, whilst also improving your pieces and trying to make, strong developing moves?
Interesting. But you're saying exchange it for the knight. I was looking maybe since the black's bishop is not so good on this diagonal already, maybe it makes sense to like pin it and win it. I mean, not win it, but exchange it for the bishop instead of the knight, because knights are, first of all, they already developed and they are already kind of close to the king side, let's say. So I was looking at the rook e1, like doing the standard, Rui Lopez maneuver with the knight. I'm also looking at the possibility to attack the bishop, but I don't really see what exactly it achieves. It just sends the bishop where it wants to be. Yeah, I'm looking at knight b3, bishop there. This I don't like, but it creates a possibility for me to go with my dark squared bishop to g5, essentially just exchanging it. But after exchange, the problem is that the black bishop is now a beast suddenly, because it pressures my pawns and they have to play c3. But c3 on the other hand is not a bad move. It restricts the knight on c file and it restricts the bishop. So I kind of like that approach, and it kind of also possible to exchange queens in that variation. But getting back to your suggestion of exchanging this knight, uh, I think logical would be to play something like queen e2 and then knight e4.
Yeah. So that is what I was looking for. Also, all of the things you suggested actually do make a fair amount of sense. Like knight b3, sending the bishop back. If you were to develop the bishop somewhere else, like if you were to say bishop to e3 and you wanted to take control of this diagonal, that actually does make a lot of sense. The only slight issue would be something like their knight can hop in, and like concretely it's a bit weird. But all these plans make a lot of sense. I like c3 from a general standpoint. c3 is very often a good move in the Tarrasch as well. You're just restricting the knight's movement, and also the bishop can often go height here, and the queen can use that square as well. But yeah, what I was looking for, you are correct, is queen to e2. And my point is, after they do something like castles, wait, oops, I need to. I kind of just wanted to. Whatever. I was just going to try and like hide the notation, but it doesn't really matter. Anyway, so yeah, now what I was suggesting is knight to e4. And would you be able to? Do you think? Can you come up with any other move where black can actually maintain this knight? Because I can't, and this is actually the point of taking on c5, is that you attract the bishop to an undefended square on the c5 square, and you can often use this to force off the exchange of this knight. Now, I was about to play something, but what do you think black's best move is here?
Yeah, I mean, it will just transpose to the variation that I discussed earlier, almost transpose, except queen is on e2. Yeah, so essentially black should play bishop to e7, just defend the knight and put the bishop on the long diagonal there. But after the c3, it's not going to be doing that much there. I mean, after the exchange of the knight and then c3. So yeah, so, bishop to e7, and then take the knight, and then bishop takes, and then c3. I wouldn't. I mean, I'm looking at this position, and it's just hard to come up with the plan for white how to make a progress. Of course, I accomplished my goal of exchanging the knight, but how do I proceed with the attack? Like,
well, I think
should I push f pawn?
The question is we don't actually have to take this knight right away after bishop e7. The knight is well placed on e4, and the option is always there because they can't really move their knight out of the way, because that just introduces all kinds of pins and problems. Something else I also want to talk about is, what do you think the problem with black taking this knight here is? Like, from a standpoint, we can say white is better, but I just was wondering if you could like come up with some suggestions for why exactly white is better.
Well, white is better here because there is a lot of attacking potential. We can build the battery on. So essentially, bishop d3 creates the mate threat. Knight g5 creates a mate threat, and they need to create weakness around their king. And our black squared bishop is still alive, and so essentially it can create a lot of problems, and their king is going to be really weak. So I'm looking at knight g5 first. Let's say something like g6, then maybe bishop first. And the reason is we want to free up the g5 square for the bishop then. I mean, maybe not g5, maybe we want to go h6 and create the, how it's called, lobs?
The lobster.
The mate where the queen is gonna go on something like, on the long diagonal, and the bishop is already there. Yeah, something like that. So it's just gonna be really unpleasant for black to play.
That all of that is correct and very good. In terms of observations, we have a lot of attacking potential, and what's important, like I was saying before, we've exchanged our queenside knight for their kingside knight, right? And we still have our kingside knight. So all their minor pieces and their rooks are very sidelined. But one really important thing that I was hoping you would mention is this light squared bishop, which basically has no prospects because of the activity of our queen. They can't go b6 and develop because the knight will drop. If they move the knight and go b6, the rook drops. So they're going to have to make so many moves, like moving the rook, moving the knight, moving the pawn, then moving the bishop, if they ever want to get developed. And that gives us lots of time to formulate an attack with all of our extra pieces that we have that can access the position. There's also some interesting ideas if this bishop ever moves off the diagonal of a rook lift as well, which I think is something quite interesting that you can to be aware of. But yeah, all of what you said is correct and very good as well.
I didn't mention bishop because, I mean, it's kind of bad by default in French, so it didn't even cross my mind that bishop ever can be good.
Well,
in some variations, it actually does become a good piece.
But the thing is, in the Tarrasch, the bishop often becomes really, really good with b6, bishop b7. So this is a really critical idea that you want to try and be stopping as much as you can. Like, I don't know if you're familiar, because of the fact that the center pawns have been traded off, when most people play the French, they'll have a pawn on d5, so the bishop doesn't become good when it fianchettos. But because the pawns have been exchanged, these D and C pawns, the bishop can get very, very strong. So that is something to keep note of. But yeah.
Okay, that's actually a nice thing to know, because for some reason I never actually considered, I never even was thinking about the bishop there. Like, maybe my opponent is just not playing very good moves. That's why I wasn't familiar with the idea.
Yeah, there's also another common idea that they try and go bishop d7 to bishop to c6 as well. That one's common in a lot of openings. But we were suggesting bishop to e7 is what the best move is. And I do think it's the best move. But while I was saying our goal is to exchange this knight, that doesn't have to be what we do instantly. So we have got other options here, and we can try and put more pressure on them. So do you have some suggestions for how we can do that?
Well, bishop g5 is a blunder, I think.
Why is bishop g5 a blunder?
Just knight takes on e4 and bishop is... we can take the bishop first.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
I guess we can do that to force black to exchange, but let me evaluate the final position after that. So takes, we take, queen takes, we take the knight. Okay. Bishop d3, g6. I think it's pretty decent.
yeah, I mean, what I'm trying to get across with this move bishop g5 is, let's say we do enter down this line. The pieces being traded, both the knight and the dark square bishop, sorry, the more pieces that we trade and maintain our good light squared bishop, the more apparent it becomes how bad black's light squared bishop is. So if black was getting desperate, they could play a move like e5, but this just creates new problems, like this pawn they now have to defend, for instance. So as long as we can try and maintain black having this really bad light squared bishop, even a move like knight e5 and exchanging these pieces, white just has a much more pleasant endgame. And you have to, I think, if you're playing the Tarrasch, it's helpful to try and have an understanding of, like, you want to feel comfortable going into these good bishop versus bad bishop, same color bishop endgames. Also, you have the 3 pawns versus 2, which gives a significant advantage in that you can try and often promote this c pawn to a queen, and black can never start moving their pawns because their pawns are in front of their king, which means that while queens are on the board, they can't push forward without jeopardizing and running into potential checkmates. So these endgame advantages is something that we can definitely look into more in the future. But I just sort of wanted to tap into the idea of making advantageous trades. Once you notice the opponent's bad piece, the more of their good pieces that you trade off, like we just got rid of their good knight, we just got rid of their good bishop, they have one more piece that you could maybe consider to be good. If we trade off that as well, then they're just left with a bad bishop versus a good bishop, which is a lot clearly better than it is to have, say, a good bishop and a good knight versus a good knight and a bad bishop. That's slightly less clear.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty advanced, but I kind of understand. Yeah, I was thinking like for white, let's say after something like rook d8, I was thinking maybe it makes sense to first go a3. So, and the reason is to stop knight b4 when we go to bishop d3. So essentially prepare bishop d3, because I don't want to go immediately, because after g6, knight can jump there and threaten to win the bishop.
Okay, I think one thing that I'm noticing is you seem to be a little bit fixated on this hope of trying to checkmate black. Now, my point is that after we've initiated these exchanges, if you want to try and checkmate black, probably your best option is something like knight g3 even, and trying to keep pieces on the board, but I don't think that is objectively the best approach. Oftentimes, your best shot can actually be trying to work out an endgame. And in this position, I don't think the bishop's really any better on d3 than it is on c4 at the moment. And if anything, another thing that we should try and make as an observation is that both this bishop being bad means that this rook is bad. So using that knowledge, what should we try and do with this rook?
Just exchange because it's a good rook.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's like it sounds overly simple, but it works. Let's say we move this rook. It doesn't really matter which one you move. Obviously, they don't want to exchange with us because that just gives us the file.
Yeah, you see, the reason why I'm attached to bishop d3 is essentially also preparing for endgame. I'm just trying to force black to create the weaknesses around their king. Because as long as I will force them to create the like essentially they will be forced to go to 6, and it creates pretty ugly structure on the king side. So I'm just trying to ensure that their pawns there, which is the majority against my 3 pawns. But yeah, you're saying that that they will not move anytime soon because of the because it will weaken their king even further. But for some reason, like I don't see that. I'm just afraid that they have a majority and they want to make it as ugly as possible for them, and as hard for them to push it. So that's pretty much the reason why.
Yeah.
Exchanging rooks, I don't know. To me, it just looked like a move that doesn't really accomplish anything. Like essentially, I think I would say that I have a hard time to look at the moves that are just exchanges, because yeah, maybe that's the problem with my evaluation of the positions, that I don't see which pieces are good and bad. And so I think this lesson was actually pretty valuable in terms of like opening my eyes on the fact that some pieces are better than the other, even though they have the same like points of material, like knights and bishop, for example, or knights and knights, like 3 points this piece, 3 points that piece. But essentially, what you're saying here is that some pieces, like the knight on the king side for black, is more valuable than my queen side knight, which is really eye-opening information for me. I need to be looking at this more.
It's actually very interesting. I don't know if you've ever looked at the games of Kramnik or Karpov, but they were both very famous for often winning games in what looks like just it literally just looks like they're exchanging pieces, but they're just making gradual good exchanges. And then the more pieces they exchange, the more apparent it becomes that the opponent's pieces simply aren't that good, and they often can really like it just becomes more and more clear that in the end game, okay, their king's a bit more active, their bishop's a little bit passive, and they've just got all the advantages going into the end game, and it's just really hard to play. So I think that's definitely something good to pick up. What was I going to say? Oh yeah, I also just wanted to say, why does e5 not work tactically here?
Because we can take the rook first and then we move on.
Yeah, exactly. So, but what I'm trying to get across is that if black can ever play e5 successfully, and then f6, and then get their bishop out, and then make an exchange, this is a lot of ifs, because for one, their king, this is why I want the king on bishop on c4. It's pinning this pawn, which means that if they ever push this pawn, then we can more easily start putting pressure on it before they can defend it. So everything's kind of tempo for tempo, in that we don't want them to be able to develop their pieces in time. So black might go for bishop d7 here. I think that's probably a move that makes the most sense. But we want to try and be in time to maximize our pieces before they can get into the game, because you might see that this knight's also pretty nicely restricted as well. So we should have time to do things like doubling rooks, and maybe even throwing in your move to provoke g6, which I think is very valuable as well, because let's say their knight moves away and they can go g6. you can notice that these squares on f6 and h6 are holes, and if their knight ever moves away so their bishop can develop, our knight will gain a square in the center, and we can then use g4 to try and jump into these weaknesses. So it's a lot of give and take, but what matters is that we're on the better side of it, and you can really, the best way to build up your understanding for how to put pressure on the player with the worst pieces is just experience. You have to play the games and then see how people can try and equalize against you. You'll see what ideas they're playing, and then you can try and learn to stop those ideas in the future and make things more and more unpleasant. Because I'm going to be honest, at like the sub 2000 level, it doesn't take that much pressure in these kind of equal positions. And I'm putting equal sort of in quotation marks here because the engine will say this is plus 0.2, it's close to equality. And you might not be like too excited to see that, but I'll just say that people lose these positions all the time. It's just really hard for humans to play a passive and unpleasant position. It's a lot harder to do that than it is to, say, play an active position where you might be down a pawn, but you've got a lot of counter chances and you can look for aggressive ideas. So I think this point of trying to subdue your opponent and control is definitely something that should be taken up. But I think that's probably enough on that position. Really, I think, yeah, we'll probably just only get through this one as well, a final position in the Tarrasch, and then I'd like to look at this calculation exercise, which also I think did come out of a Tarrasch defense as well. So we're just going to take a look at this one. Okay, clearly you know the line that you're going for. I think e5 is more common, but it doesn't really matter. Bishop d3 transposes anyway, as you showed. I don't know if you are you playing bishop d3 as your main weapon because you like this exchange here.
I think I looked up this line somewhere, and I just saw that it has a pretty decent objective evaluation, and at the same time it developing pieces. So I was like, okay, that's my way to go, because you know, it's often easier to play openings where you have pieces developed, so that you don't have to worry about that making one inaccuracy gonna lead you to losing the game. So here I just chose this line solely on this principle that I want to develop my pieces.
Yeah, it's a good line. And by the way, just for anyone that's wondering why this isn't a free pawn, it's this. So, but also taking in the center is a pretty valid way to play. And this is sort of what I was talking about earlier when I said this light squared bishop can actually get pretty strong. Now, in this particular instance, it's actually bad because of queen f3, and you set up this like double attack idea where the bishop would be lost. But in general, if black is able to get their setup with these bishops, this is a situation where black unwinds pretty nicely, and rather than having the bad French bishop, they actually have a good French bishop. So I understand bishop d3 from an objective point, it is good. I slightly prefer, I think if you're going to play e5, you should play it. If you're not going to play e5, then play bishop d3. You sort of get what I'm saying, but you play bishop d3 and then e5, which is still good objectively. I just don't know why, like, I just don't know why you wouldn't play e5 here if you were going to play it, you know? But this is fine. It's just bishop d3 just gives black two choices rather than e5, which gives one choice. And basically all I'm saying here is that you'll have more theoretically to remember if the more choices you give black. So I just prefer the more forcing option personally, but it's a personal preference thing. It does reduce the amount of time you have to spend like studying openings and stuff. So you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I will have a look at the e5 straight away because
Yeah,
I think it's just transposes.
it transposes exactly.
Yeah.
But my point is that if you're playing bishop d3, they can also take or play c5.
This
So you're
one is
just
actually
giving.
hard to play. Like I don't understand how should I stick to the e pawn because actually this is like line where you give up the d5 d4 pawn. I mean they can take it, but essentially I will win it back. But this line is just about having the stronghold on the e5. I mean, using your e5 square, using your e5 pawn, just
Yeah.
have a like tough time for their knight to go back on the f6, their bishop develop. Yeah. So this is interesting line, but I'm just playing it on intuition, to be honest. I'm
Yeah.
not really sure any. Like after this position, I don't know what the move is. Obviously, it's probably knight f3 or knight e2. Probably knight e2 actually. No, knight e2 traps the bishop.
Well, you play
Knight
c3 first, is
Okay,
what you ended
yeah.
up playing, which is correct. Also, the point that I wanted to make out for why I think e5 is a good move is because, once again, you're transferring a king side knight to the queen side, so that now all their knights will be on the queen side as well as their bad bishop, which means that their king can be very, very vulnerable when it does castle king side. But yeah, you ended up playing pawn c3, which is good. The knight goes to c6, and here you played knight f3. And knight f3, I don't know if you're aware of this pawn sacrifice line where you castle. And do you know about this line?
Let's say I saw it on the Nargitski speedrun, but I don't know how to play it. Obviously.
Okay. I'm not a huge fan of it, just because I feel like going down a pawn can be a little bit unnecessary, and I think people should, for the most part, respect the material, because often black always has the option to give back a pawn and then try and equalize. So I'd rather have the material and have the option to give it back and equalize than I would not have the material and then have the potential to never win it back and then just be a bit worse. But knight f3 is very valid, but you also mentioned the other move, which is quite interesting. I mean, the main problem I have with knight f3, by the way, isn't actually this queen b6 move, because I think the pawn sacrifice isn't that bad. The pawn sacrifice is all right. The issue I have is actually this move that was played in the game, which is bishop to e7, and then they go for g5 and g4. And this gets really crazy.
Really strong idea. I didn't know it. Like when I played knight f3, I knew that there are some differences between knight f3 and knight e2.
Yeah.
And essentially knight e2 preserves the pawn, and knight f3 is like more combative option.
Yes.
And I went for more combative option, but I don't know how to play it. So I was just smashed.
Yeah, I mean knight f3 is more combative. But black can either like go for the pawn sacrifice and suffer, or go for this very interesting bishop e7 and g5 approach, where they're taking advantage of the fact that your knight is currently on d2. So I believe you castled in this game, and then they go g5. And my issue here is that things get very hectic. I think you played pawn g4 to stop this, because obviously your knight's borderline trapped, and if it moves back, then you are dropping all these pawns. And I'm just going to say the main line is you're meant to take, and then they end up taking this. But I just find these positions to be so chaotic, and I think black's actually having more fun than white here, so I'm not a fan. For this reason, just because of bishop e7 in general, I think knight e2 is a much safer and very sound option that you can go for, and it also has a lot less theory that you have to learn. And the reason you're going knight e2, I think you know this.
Yeah, I already looked it up because I'm struggling against French pretty much all of the games. So when I got this position, I looked it up, like why exactly we are going knight e2.
Yeah.
And essentially, it's just to free up the f3 for the other knight.
Exactly.
And now this way we can defend.
Yeah, now you have a strong bind.
Yeah.
And I mean, now you basically, the idea is you don't even have to castle. Sometimes you castle. Sometimes you can go h4, h5. I don't know if you've seen this idea in the French. And the point is you want to provoke h6. And it's a pretty deep idea. But the point of provoking h6 is that then you can go rook h3 and rook g3 and attack this pawn here. And that stops their bishop from ever developing off the starting square, and they can't break free by pushing their g-pawn because your h-pawn can take it. So those are some of the ideas that you might have been interested in. And what was I going to say as well? If they go for this with this exchange, it's really, really hard for black to break down this position in the center. If they ever go for f6, you should normally take this pawn on f6, and then they'll have this this e pawn here, which is a little bit stuck, and they can't ever really liberate it, which means they can't liberate their bishop. And so you sort of you castle. At some point, you'll develop your bishop. You can drop this pawn as well. This pawn doesn't really matter. And because if they take the pawn, your b file gets opened up. So let's say they just develop. Let's say you just castle, and they develop their bishop. You can play moves like rook to e1, and you can try and formulate a plan around this e5 square and this e6 pawn. Also, the good thing is that this pawn on d4 is always tactically defended. So you can play something like knight g3, and of course they can't take because there's bishop g6 after taking. And then if they castle, you can also, there's an interesting way you can play with b3 and bishop b2, which I quite like. And the point of this approach is that you put your knight in the center, and basically you're just going to be a bit annoying. You're going to put your rooks either side of here, and black just doesn't have a lot of forward moves they can make. Now, when I'm coming up with plans in a game, I don't try and come up with everything all at once. It just has to be one step at a time. So you can see also I feel like a lot of people sort of are a bit pessimistic, I would say, in that they don't like stop and appreciate the progress that they have made, and they're saying, well, how do I always make more, rather than thinking about how unpleasant something is for the opponent. And this position is very unpleasant for the opponent because let's say you put a rook on e1, a knight in the center, and your other rook. How is black ever actually going to do anything? Like literally, black is moving about, like this. Say they can attack your bishop, but you can always move it back. And once you put your knight in the middle, what is black actually doing here? You've got your two bishops. Their bishops are just worse. They can't take with the knight because the pawn takes with a fork. If they take with the bishop, then this knight's getting kicked away and the queen's joining in the attack. So all I'm trying to say is you don't really need that much opening knowledge to play this closed Tarrasch. I just think if black doesn't play f6, black's never breaking out. if black does play f6, you have a clear target with this e6 pawn, and you can use your bishops and knights to stop it ever pushing forward, and then take control of that center square. So that can be the plan that you play for. And then once you have full control, you can just keep moving into the enemy position and potentially start a king-sided attack. And if black never plays the move f6 and just plays bishop e7, oops, then black's also not really doing anything. You can just play it. You can play it slow. You can also play this h4, h5, h6 plan that I pointed out. So like this, for instance. I also don't know if are you familiar with the concept of bishop to b1 in these French defense positions? Because that's another really useful one.
In general, yes, but not not specifically in French, but in general, I do understand that bishop there is not worse than bishop on d3. So
yeah.
Well, I would be like reluctant to block my rook like that, but especially because their bishop is like on e7, which is controlling a3. Black bishop, I mean.
Yeah.
I'm just wanted to say that a rook is not getting out through the a3.
It's true. So, you can always play something like b3, get the bishop out, then get the rook out, then move the bishop back.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to get across is that in these kinds of positions, you sort of have all the time in the world, because either black's going to break with f6, in which case you can be ready with your bishop going to b2, or if black doesn't break with f6, then you basically can do whatever you want. Like black literally
rook b1 is actually, I think, a bad move, because essentially you will be forced to give up the light-squared bishop.
I didn't mean to highlight rook b1. I was trying to highlight b3, bishop b2, and rook c1. Sorry.
Okay.
But yeah. But you get what I'm trying to say, which is that these positions are just so cramped for black, and the only way they can ever make them work is with f6. But f6 has the concession that once you take it, you have control of the e5 square, and you have a new plan. So basically, you can just go along with your plan of making your improvements, and if black never does anything, then you're going to win. And if black does do something, then you're going to have this nice advantage of the center, central square.
Yeah, if they play f6, I think the plan is clear. Like, just to create a lot of pressure on e6, on the pawn, make it as hard as possible for black to move it forward to e5, and just play on the king side, just to create some sort of attack. I think my main problem was that I didn't know this variation. Like, I didn't know the difference between knight e2 and knight f3 variation. Like now, since I looked it up, I think I'm more confident in my ability to find the right plan in this kind of position. Because, for playing against like g5 and this push of the pawn was really hard. Like, so then that's why I decided that I need to look up like, well, what exactly I'm supposed to do there. But yeah, in general, it's really helpful.
That's good. I also sorry.
Just to one question, like in these positions, we are never getting any space on the queen side, right? Like we are just chilling there, and the main action goes on the king side.
There's actually a very useful principle you can use to guide where you should be playing with your pawns. And that is which direction is your most advanced pawn in the center pointing at. And you can see our pawn chain's going this way, which means that we should be focusing our play towards the king side, while black's pawn's going this way, which means they should be focusing their play towards the queen side. Which there's also another rule that you don't want to play on the side where you're weaker. So in general, we don't want to be playing too much on the queen side. Beside, like we're not pushing to expand. We're just maybe pushing to develop this way. But really, that's only if they play something like f6. But let's just do like a hypothetical. What if black actually just moves back and forth? So let's say black is just moving back and forth. I think it should be clear that white has a lot of improving moves, while black doesn't have a lot of improving moves. And let's say we get a position like this, and they go for g6. Well, now you can start playing for h4, h5. You can maneuver the knight over here. Potentially, the bishop would actually be better on this diagonal. And the interesting thing about such close positions is that it actually doesn't matter if you, say, position a bishop on a poor diagonal, because like putting the bishop here makes sense if they play f6. Now that they've played g6, they're not going to play f6, because that means that h5 would completely crush the king side, right? They need the f pawn to maintain the king side. But because they've now made this commitment, we can spend the time to, say, move our rook and move the bishop back to the diagonal. So this is another really big point I wanted to get across. Closed positions, time doesn't matter very much. Pawn's movement matters a lot. So obviously pawns can't go backwards. Once they've made this concession, it doesn't matter if we have to spend 2 tempi to improve our bishop, because they've made a move that they can never take back. So they've made the structural change. Mm-hmm. And yeah, that was really the last point I wanted to get across. I don't know if you have any other questions in general from stuff that we've talked about before we move on to the last puzzle exercise, which is just calculation exercise. Then we'll probably finish up.
I think I asked all the questions that I had. So for now, like everything's clear. I will need to like unwrap everything on my own. Like play some games, probably Blitz, and get some French defense going.
Exactly.
Yeah, we'll see. But for now, it looks clear.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's good. Well, the final thing is this, and this puzzle is actually a bit of a monster. I'm going to be honest with you. It's quite advanced, but I've saved it for the end. And in the game, you played knight takes pawn, which does leave you better an upper pawn, but then the opponent castled and sort of escaped. So I think the first move should be quite obvious. You can just say it.
Rook e1.
Rook e1. Yes. And now the question is, how does black deal with this? Now, obviously blocking is bad.
Bishop e7. I mean,
yeah. So they could go bishop.
Consider just king f8, but then their rook isn't bad.
Well, let's start with bishop e7.
Yeah.
Bishop e7 is probably the easiest of the three to like show why it's wrong. So let's have a go at that.
Why wrong? Why to put the rook on e1 is wrong, or what exactly is wrong?
No, as in bishop e7 is the easiest defense to beat that black can put up.
Well, here I'm looking at the possibility to stack rooks. That would be pretty much like preventing black from ever castling.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at the check on a4, like queen a4 check, then bishop b7, and then I was thinking maybe shift to c4, create a mate threat, so they kind of have to somehow defend, but how? Queen cannot. Oh my god, this is just being.
That's already a win. So
yeah.
There's so many ways to stop bishop e7. You found one. Yours is actually quite nice. I wasn't even looking at that as a solution. I was just looking at like the brute forces ones, which is just like put the queen here, or put the rook here and then the queen there. So I was just looking at like all the obvious ones, but queen a4, queen a3 is nice as well. Actually, wait.
The reason
No, queen a4 is king f8.
King there. Yeah, actually, that's a good point. Well,
Yeah.
the reason why I looked at this one is that I want to free up the possibility for rooks to stack. But yeah, after king f8 is actually not a good move.
Yeah. So okay, queen a4 is a slight. Queen a4 is a mistake.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I said, the obvious one's queen e2. Queen e2 gets the job done. There's no way for the queen to defend the bishop. You're just going to take the bishop next move. It's game over. In fact, it's a checkmate unless they block with the bishop and just lose it. It's okay. Bishop e7's pretty easy to crack. Now I'm gonna go in like terms of difficulty in each of the king moves, because there's obviously these king moves. You can block with the bishop legally, but that's you just drops the bishop. So let's start with king d7 and why king d7 is bad. Now, once you realize why king d7 is bad, by the way, this actually feeds. It's like a scaling concept where you're going to be combining like different ideas, which is the same idea, but it's like different levels to the same idea. And you'll see that lots of the tactical themes end up repeating themselves no matter where the king goes. So let's see.
Okay, interesting. Well, obviously I'm looking at queen a4 again. But the problem is here now, yeah, they can block and they can create this escape route for a king to hide on d8, which is gonna be really hard to get into because we don't have a dark red bishop and our blue knight is super far away. So I kind of want to reject this one immediately. So now I'm looking at the bishop f5 and trying to maybe do something to make it work, like g4. So g4, queen takes h3, bishop f5. Only move is to go to d8. Then what do we do?
By the way, you can say if you don't think if you think it works, like it's not a bad thing if you get to the end of a line and then you can't see another move, because that just means that you can reject the line and move on. So you don't have to get fixated on one particular line. This is when you start your calculation, you go through what I like to call a branch, where you just come up with a wide variety of moves before going too deep into any of them. Because if you go too deep into moves that don't work, you'll often find that the win's a lot easier to find than you think, and you can probably find it in one or two moves. The tactic's often not like 6-7 moves deep.
It just wins the queen. Or no, yes, it does. The knight e5 just check and the queen is attacked, so queen takes knight.
Yeah.
But I mean, we gave up a piece and the rook. It should be winning, but still.
Yeah.
It just means that the game will go on.
There's actually an even better way to pull off this tactic. You can combine this idea with something else. But that is a winning move, yeah.
Combine.
So you have to notice the problem with this. Well, it's still good. The problem is that the bishop is guarding this square.
Yeah. Distract the bishop. That's that's
C5.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
But what if, I mean, yeah, we can win a piece here, but
where can the queen go though?
Well, the queen just takes on d5 right now.
Yeah.
And I think that they will just give up the bishop and save the queen. I think they take with the queen instead of the pawn, but whatever. And here, here another problem.
They're getting checkmated.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really nice find.
Yeah. So you can basically you're deciding whether or not you want a full piece and a checkmating attack, or a queen and bishop. Sorry, queen for a rook and knight. Both are good and both are winning, but the full piece is often a lot clearer than some kind of material imbalance. So like whenever there's an imbalance, let's say I could get 2 rooks for a queen, or I could just get 2 full pawns. I'd often take the 2 full pawns, even if they're close in evaluation, just because when you have more of something that they don't have, it's a lot easier to just trade off and win the game than it is if they have something which is different to what you have. Like the bishop and the rook that they'll have against our queen can combine to be quite annoying because they'll have 2 pieces versus our 1 queen. So even if it is good objectively, it can still be a bit of a pain. But anyway,
yeah, that's interesting.
you're right with these two.
In this specific position, I think I would go for the queen.
Yeah.
I would go with knight e5, especially because first of all, their rooks are bad. So
Yes, that's true.
all of their pieces are just not developed. So after the exchange, I left with my active bishop, with my queen, and the rook is easy to activate on e1, while they just left with the awful bishop. They will need to spend the tempo just to activate the bishop. They will need to spend another 2 tempos to just activate the rooks. So in this particular position, I think I would go for the queen. I think practically speaking, it should be easier to win. But I see your point of winning a piece. But on my level, like even up a piece, you sometimes just can mess up everything and it will just not work properly. Like, yeah, here in this specific position, the reason is why like any option works is because the king is super weak.
Exactly.
But
yeah. So king d7 is the weakest of all the options. I believe, yeah, king. Let's start with king d8. I think that one's sort of in the middle in terms of difficulty. It does rely on, I think, a pretty similar idea.
No. So the things that I'm looking at, I kind of want to move the queen because I don't want to exchange when my knight moves somewhere. So I kind of want to move to a4 again, even though it's not a check. And the reason is to prevent rook coming to... Yeah, it's bad. The reason why I was looking at this, I wanted to prevent rook e8, but now after bishop here it just doesn't work. So maybe it's something else. And the reason why I in general want to move the queen is obviously to unpin my knight so that I can move it forward to the attack. Because whenever like I move it, black just takes my queen, and it's much harder to attack such a big king without the queen. So I kind of want to preserve my queen for attacking purposes.
Okay, I mean,
so
I'm going to give a hint. In order to solve this specific position, you have to make quite an interesting observation, which is that the queen is the only piece defending f7. And that's the only hint I'm going to give at the moment.
Okay, is it? Oh my god. So okay, I'm looking again at c5 because we want to free up the square for our knight. So yeah, there, then 95, then rook f8. Yeah. No, okay, they need to take the knight first. They need to take the queen first.
Mm-hmm.
Then can we go the intermediate? I think we can, but is it that good? Yeah, there, and then we have to recapture the. There we have to recapture the queen because I don't see what else can we do with the knight, so that it's with check and so on.
We're very close.
Hmm.
We don't have to recapture the queen just yet. Just try and look for some more attacking moves.
Okay, I'm looking at the bishop. Is it mate? Huh, it's mate. Yeah, tough. Queen cannot block. Yeah.
It is a checkmate.
Yeah.
So just for everyone, this is hard to see.
It is. And the knight blocks
Yeah.
d6. I
Exactly.
didn't see. I thought that the king just escapes.
And this random pawn just guarding c6 as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think these are the kind of exercises which you're really surprised that this actually could have happened in your own game. Like if you had gone for rook e1, the chances are actually pretty high they would go for either one of these two moves and you would actually get to pull this off. So you think these are like the kind of puzzles, these only show up in like Puzzle Rush or whatever? These do happen in games, which I think is pretty cool. The final one we have to look at is King f8, and I won't lie, I didn't solve this myself. I got the right answer, but I made a lot of mistakes along the way, so I didn't like fully solve it. I got it intuitively, but I didn't see the whole continuation.
Yeah, maybe now queen e2.
I think the problem.
The problem with bishop d7. Or just this. Okay, I didn't even look at this. But yeah, I mean check. There. No, it looks like it doesn't work. I mean, we cannot do much here.
Yeah.
No. Okay. What else? Well, again, queen e4, queen a4, probably the same story. Now bishop cannot block, but I mean, I don't think they even have to do this.
What else do you think they could do then?
Maybe just g6 again. And what this check does.
I mean, this one's a little bit different.
Rook, this exchange. Yeah, it's still not clear, and now that they can kind of, I was looking at for move for black, like bishop takes a h3, and then we take the rook, and then they maybe, do this.
I mean, at the very this is winning for white.
Yeah,
but
it is.
They don't have to go for that, and they can also just like leave the status quo. And I guess actually it's really hard for them to make a move, to be honest.
Something like b6 just to try to develop the queen side.
b6 I think is pretty problematic, but maybe not. Yeah, maybe b6 as well.
Hard to play, but at the same time, there's nothing concrete that we can do.
Yeah.
Okay, here 96 actually a threat, I think.
So we can agree that white is better in this line, I think. But also we haven't looked at I think c6, and it looks unclear that white's doing very well. Let's say queen c5. I don't even know if white's better anymore, because these two bishops are pretty good.
Yeah.
And everything's defended. And this is coming. So, yeah, I mean, like I said, this one, may I just say, the theme throughout has been pawn to c5. It's not pawn c5 in this one, but it's something linked to pawn c5.
Like prepared, maybe? I don't know. Rook c1, or maybe... it's hard. Maybe now just... I was looking at recapturing the pawn here in this position just to...
You can always bail out and be better. But, okay, I might just show the next move because...
Yeah.
Yeah, because...
Probably it will take like 10 minutes. For
yeah, the move's b4. Which does just give a pawn.
Yeah, I don't... Like, do we want to...
And it also gets an attack on the rook.
Yeah, I accepted it because it's with tempo.
Yeah.
It's with tempo.
So that's it.
What do we do now? Like knight 95 anyway?
Yeah. I was just going to point out why b4 makes sense, because it makes a big threat, because they can't just carry on with their plan. Like now, for instance... I think you can actually sack the rook here. And then something like this. And this is just pretty much close to game over, I think, for black. There's too many pieces in the attack that are going to combine. Because this bishop is a key defender. We'd be very happy to sacrifice one rook for this bishop, because if that happens... then this bishop, then their king's getting checkmated because they haven't developed anything other than their queen. And we would have a knight, bishop, and a rook in the attack. So, oops. So let's try and use that knowledge to come up with a move here.
Okay.
Yeah, the sort of the... sorry.
Yeah, so I kind of don't want to recapture with the queen on e1, so I kind of want to move my queen somewhere. And the squares that I'm deciding between is, again, the a4 and e2. And e2 essentially says that take the rook, I'm going to recapture, and then I'm going to checkmate. But... I'm just looking for some defense for the black. First of all, they don't have to take the rook, and second of all, they can just play a move like, again, g6 or this, and I don't really see what exactly have we achieved.
If they play g6.
I mean, it's unpleasant, but I don't see the continuation because the queen is covering e5.
Yeah. Which, one of the reasons then we might prefer queen a4 is because it attacks the bishop, whereas queen e2 doesn't attack the bishop. So queen a4 forces them to take.
Rook e8, check, takes, and then... and then take. And essentially in this position, the king cannot go to f8 anymore. Yeah, now check with the rook, yes. Check again with the queen. Yeah. And then maybe knight e5, attacking the bishop. Just take on f7, I don't know. Ugh.
Things are annoyingly resilient.
Yeah. It's really hard to come up with the proper continuation here. Like it's not a simple puzzle, definitely.
No. It's not.
I don't think rook e8 is correct. Do you think it is? Do you know what
It might still leave white better, but it doesn't kill the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Maybe rook e5, attack the queen, save the rook, prepare to double. This is a multifunctional move. Okay, this weakening the king, but not that much.
Well, you have to play f5 or g5, and I really didn't like g5, so.
Okay, f5. I mean, g4 is interesting, but not. It's getting messy, I think. So yeah, now we can try. I mean, it's just getting too long, and I don't think it's like part of the puzzle.
Yeah.
Or it's not. Is it a puzzle or no?
This is a puzzle that I made up. So. And it was from one of your games.
Okay. So yeah, so it's not a regular puzzle, because regular puzzles are usually like 3 moves deep, 5 moves deep, but here we are going like, I don't know, 7 moves.
I mean, the reason I liked it though is because everything's forcing, and I did give a bit of a disclaimer that this one is like, the main reason I picked it is because I think it had really good concepts to pick up from these 3 moves. The final move, King F8, is just a bit of a like, it's not really as useful as the other 3 in terms of like explanatory, like the educational value, but also King F8 does have like quite a funny continuation.
It's the most resilient move, and the winning continuation is just so engine rated. Engine generated.
Yeah.
I think, and the reason is just because like humans. I mean, unless it's a classical game, you probably won't see that you can just sacrifice the
pawn.
First of all, the pawn, and then the exchange.
Yeah.
And somehow win this. And I mean, maybe in classical I would try to find it, but honestly, even in classical, I think I would just reject this. Pretty soon.
The move's Queen A4, right? Because you're making the threat on the bishop and the checkmate threat. And it actually does make sense from the standpoint that once they take here, the bishop doesn't actually have any squares that it can move to. And if the bishop has no squares and this square is covered,
it can take on h3 and the knight is without the defense.
I was just about to get onto that, but we're also was going to talk about this move g6, which I think the continuation you can go for is something here, takes here, here, and then knight, knight to the center, and you just can't defend. There's no way to defend your pawns, and you're getting checkmated.
Hold on. Again, in this continuation, also, don't they have the bishop e7, like saving the bishop? No, not this one. Before we took the black bishop.
Did they play? What you were saying here?
Even before that, when the bishop was on b4, yeah, here. Can they just drop back to e7 instead of taking the rook? Like, no, I mean the black bishop from b4 to e7. Yeah, like something like that. It's just annoying for white to deal with. Like,
we can sacrifice the exchange, and it wasn't transposed even. It's just
same. Yeah, it's even worse because the king is in the center.
Yeah, exactly. So we're gonna go back to this one, and you actually pointed out what is the most, what looks to me like the most resilient move anyway. The engine has just given up at this point for black. But bishop h3 looks like it makes sense, right? Because if you take, then I take the knight, right? So what could be the problem with that? Let's say we do take. I'm just going to put this position on. Why is this good for white? Now this is the kind of position that would appear in like a puzzle rush. I think this one's very doable. I think it's pretty much impossible to have seen this variation from all the way back, but some of the time you can also just make like an intuitive exchange sacrifice, because we're not down loads of material for what we have. They still haven't developed either rooks and we have all our pieces in. I would say probably if at this point you're not seeing bishop h3 and the continuation that you're hopefully about to find, then that would be not ideal, because that would be a bit late to be seeing it. But if you get all the way to here.
So I'm looking at queen d7, but the problem is that the black queen returns to f6, and this is getting like hard to continue for now. No, don't even. I mean, this is.
They can also just be greedy, right?
Yeah, they can just take. And they already have a loft. No, it doesn't just work. Okay. Takes, check. No. Oof. Wow, that's really hard.
The theme here is an undefended queen.
Okay, check. Yeah, check on h3, and then check on h7. Yeah, but it's really deep.
I know.
Really deep. I mean,
but
from the final position, it's findable, but I just gave up at this point.
Yes, I'm so sorry. Well, I think you can probably find it from here. I think if you like really train calculation, and like it should be, it's not insane to see this takes, and then the check, and then.
Well, the queen a4 is actually hard to find.
The queen a4 is hard, I agree.
And before, when I played b4, I should already seen all of that, right? So, because you won't be playing b4 without understanding that, okay, your next move is a4, queen a4.
Yeah. Well, so I think the thing that would probably happen with me, I reckon, is I think I would find it possible to see this continuation. I wouldn't have seen. What's most likely is I would have actually missed bishop h3 as a way to get the bishop out and also defend the back rank. So it would probably be kind of lucky that there is this tactic that I would see after. But yeah, in general, b4 is a really tough move to spot. It's definitely b4 and queen a4 is definitely some engine stuff. I do agree. I don't think it's reasonable to expect from like anything. If it's not a classical game, in classical I think you can find it. But if it's not classical, then it's not reasonable.
It's really rich puzzle in terms of like all of the themes that appear here. So essentially, it's a weak king. It's a pin, like in the first variation when the bishop goes to the e7. Then there's pawn sacrifices in order to free up the square for the knight, like when we played c5 and then knight e5.
Yeah.
And now this sacrifice, which it's not even coming with check. Like when you play b4 and queen a4, you just have to see that the sacrifice here is actually sound, which is
yeah. No, it is really tough.
But interesting. Okay.
Like the King f8 is really just for fun. I think the others have the most explanatory value in terms of like King d8. King g8 shows the in-between move that you can play before recapturing the queen, which is nice. And they also all have this c5 idea, which is a nice deflection. So I just thought there were, like you said, there were a lot of good themes in this puzzle. And King F8 was just a bit unnatural. But like, yeah, it's not a manufactured puzzle, so I can't distill everything. Anyway, I think that probably puts us to a close. I think, yeah, we've covered about as much as we could.
Thanks for the lesson. I am glad that we all went over the French defense.
Yeah.
And as I thought, because you messaged me that we will go over like all of the opening.
Yeah, it wasn't long
enough. I was like, okay, that's too much now.
Yeah.
But yeah, when we went just over French, it's good enough. I don't want more. Like I don't want to make it overly complex for myself and for yourself as well, because I mean,
yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for the lesson, and have a great evening.
All right, no problem. Also, thanks to everyone for watching. If you did make it this far, please let us know. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.